My name is Kyle Miller. I'm 29 years old, and I've been a senior copywriter at Hamilton International Advertising for 3 years. But everyone in Creative Division 3, from the department director Martin Scott all the way down to the intern who changes the water jugs in the break room, knew me as the useless guy who got in through connections. That connection was between my father and the company's founder, John Hamilton Sr. They'd been college roommates, bunk beds, and everything. My dad became a high school teacher, lived a quiet, honest life, and retired with pancreatic cancer. On his way out, he called me to his hospital bed, held my hand with what little strength he had left, and said, "Kyle, I don't have much to leave you. Go find your Uncle Hamilton. He promised me he'd look after you." John Hamilton Sr. was a good man. When I went to see him, he was in a wheelchair, hands shaking, but his voice was steady as stone. "Your father was my best friend. Come to the company. Learn as you go. You'll do fine. You're his son." He placed me in Creative Division 3 and personally called the department director at the time. But that goodwill, once it passed through Martin Scott's mouth, turned into a brand seared onto my skin. Martin was 43, with a slick-back haircut so polished you could see your reflection in it. He wore custom shirts with his initials embroidered on the cuffs and enough cologne to choke half a floor. He'd been with the company for 12 years, climbing from junior copywriter to department director, famous for two things: landing tough clients and squeezing his subordinates dry. He kept a circle of yes-men around him. Whoever played ball got the good projects, and whoever didn't got crushed. From my very first day on the job, he nailed me to the cross. That morning at 8:30, HR walked me into the Creative Division 3 workspace. Martin emerged from his glass-walled corner office and looked me up and down like I was a piece of second-hand furniture. Half a dozen coworkers gathered around, waiting to see what the new guy looked like. "This is Kyle Miller," Martin announced, clapping his hands together. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the whole floor. "The boss's godson. Mr. Hamilton personally called to ask us to take good care of him." He said it with that particular tone, the one where he's smiling at you, but you can hear the knife underneath. He lingered on the word godson. A few of the older employees exchanged glances with the corners of their mouths twitching upward. At the time, I didn't catch it. I thought it was just an introduction. I went around shaking hands. Some people barely touched my fingers before pulling away. That afternoon, Martin called me into his office and dropped a stack of papers on my desk, last year's contract with Vitality Source. "Go through it, pull out all the rebate clauses, make a summary table, and get it to me by the end of the day." I flipped through it, 40-something pages of dense legal jargon. I'd been on the job for maybe 6 hours. I didn't even know how to log into half the internal systems. But I said yes. I worked until 7 that night and sent him the summary. 5 minutes later, he replied with an email CCing the entire team. "Wrong format. Redo. Template is on the shared drive. Find it yourself." I searched for the template forever. I asked the guy at the next desk over. He didn't even look up. "I can't find it either. Figure it out yourself." I finished at 11 p.m., reformatted it from scratch as best I could, and sent it again. He never replied. The next morning, I came in and found my summary printed out and taped to the public whiteboard, right across from the break room, where everyone went for coffee. Someone had circled 7 or 8 errors in red pen with the annotation, "Basic competency questionable." I stood there staring at it for a long time. A female coworker walked past with her mug, glanced at the board, and gave the tiniest smirk. Her name was Elisa Park. She was in design. I'd learned later that she was actually decent people, but that morning she said nothing. That was my first day at Hamilton International Advertising, and for the next 3 years, every single day was worse than the one before it. Month 1, Martin assigned me to compile all the department's travel reimbursement reports. I told him that was accounting's job. He said, "You do what you're told. New people need to learn the ropes." I did it. Half a month's worth of data, names, places, invoice amounts, line by line. When I sent it to him, he didn't even look at it before forwarding it to accounting and saying, right in front of me, "Have someone double-check this. I don't trust new hires." Month 2. He put me in charge of the break room coffee supply. "You're here early anyway. It's no trouble." Except no trouble meant tracking preferences for 40-plus people, restocking every Monday, and calling repair guys when the machine broke. One weekend, he messaged me to come in and change the coffee beans because he had a big client meeting Monday morning. I was out furniture shopping with Susan. I hesitated for 2 seconds. His second message came immediately. "What? The boss's godson is too good for this." I went. Susan sat on that showroom couch waiting until the store closed. Her face was longer than the sofa itself. Month 3. He assigned me the Vitality Source quarterly pitch. My first real chance at owning a major client project. I pulled 4 all-nighters, went through 17 revisions. On presentation day, Martin sat there silent the whole time. When the client asked, "Who came up with the core concept?" Martin jumped in before I could open my mouth. The team shaped it together. I set the overall direction. He didn't say my name. Not once. After the client left, I sat at my desk staring at my screen. Tom leaned over from the next cubicle and whispered, "Dude, I saw your drafts. The core concept the client loved, that was your 11th version." I asked him why he hadn't spoken up. He shrank back. Martin glared at me. I didn't dare. Tom was one of those guys who never stirs trouble. Smiled at everyone. Helped anyone who asked. He wasn't mean. He just wasn't brave. At the end of that year, Martin gave me a B on my performance review. I didn't get it. I'd finished every project on time, logged more overtime than anyone, and my work might not have been flashy, but it was solid. I went to his office to ask. He leaned back in his chair, spinning a pen. "Kyle, you're reliable, but you lack independent creative thinking. Teamwork needs improvement. A B is generous for a new guy. Take it slow." I let it go. I told myself I'd prove him wrong next year. Year 2, I did the Vitality Source spring campaign. This time, I added a microscopic watermark with my name on every slide, small enough that you'd miss it unless you were looking. The client praised it again. Martin stood up and said, "Kyle did contribute this time," then pivoted into a 10-minute monologue about how he'd steered the overall vision. I sat in the corner watching him hold court under the projector light. Everyone nodded along. Nobody looked back at me. That night, Susan asked how it went. I said the client was happy. She asked if a promotion was coming. I said we'd see. She didn't push further, but her back stiffened as she turned toward the kitchen. Then came something at the end of year 2 that made me realize Martin wasn't just tough. He was cruel. November's team retreat at a Long Island beach house. We drank until late. Martin was slurring his words by 10, arms slung around my neck, announcing to the whole department, "Our mascot did great today. Grilled all that meat for everyone. Come on, give it up for the mascot." They clapped. Someone whistled. I was holding a skewer of chicken, the charcoal heat still burning my palm. My smile froze for half a second, then I forced it back into place. Elisa was out on the balcony smoking later that night. I stepped out for air. She said quietly, "Martin crossed a line." I looked at her. She said, "Don't stare at me like that." I can't say it to his face either. "But between us, I think you've got a rough deal." I thanked her. That was the first and only time in 3 years anyone admitted I had it rough. But that's all Elisa ever said. Back in the office the next day, she did her work, ignored it when Martin called me mascot in front of her, kept her head down and drew. I didn't blame her. The environment had taught everyone to shut up. By year 3, the pressure from Susan's family had started to cinch tight. Susan and I met in college. She studied marketing and now worked as a brand manager at a fashion label. She was smart, beautiful, wore her makeup with surgical precision, and made more money than me. We'd been together 4 years, engaged for 1. The ring was a carat, half a year of my salary, and I never told her mother the actual price. Her mother, Elaine Lin, ran a dry cleaning shop in Queens. She was an immigrant from Shanghai with a tongue sharp enough to practice law. Every time I went over for dinner, Elaine would casually bring up some friend's son-in-law who'd made partner or some cousin's daughter who'd just bought a new SUV. Kyle, Susan danced ballet as a child, bled through her toe shoes, and never cried. She deserves the best. Elaine put a piece of braised pork in my bowl, sweet as honey. You can't keep renting in that walk-up with no doorman forever. And your family, did your father leave you anything? I said my dad left a house in Brooklyn and a little cash. Elaine smiled dim noticeably. Oh, well, then you need to step up at work. A man's career comes first. Susan kept eating without looking up. I stared at her lowered lashes and felt something tighten in my chest. Those months, I went to work with my tail between my legs and came home to Susan's growing silences and longer hours. She started going in on weekends, saying the project was busy. Once, I saw a message from her mother on her laptop. Don't waste your youth on one dead end. That job of his is going nowhere. I didn't bring it up. I put the phone down and pretended I hadn't seen. Spring of year 3, Martin did something that nearly broke me. The Vitality Source annual contract renewal. He put me on the preliminary pitch. I spent 2 weeks building a 50-page proposal, solid data, sharp creative, detailed client analysis. I submitted it. He said, "Not bad. I'll polish it." A week later, the renewal went through. Company-wide announcement. Director Martin Scott led the team to successfully renew Vitality Source's annual contract. Projected revenue increase $3.2 million. There was a photo. Martin in the middle holding a champagne flute, sales guys flanking him, Elise's face half visible in the back corner. I wasn't even a hair in the frame. I went to him. He said he'd changed 80% of my proposal, so it didn't count as mine. I asked him to show me my original draft. He said he'd deleted it. That afternoon, I sat at my desk for a full hour. Tom passed by 3 times, opening his mouth and closing it again. Elisa sent me a message on the internal chat. Don't let it get to you. There's always next time. I wrote back. It's been 3 years. When the hell is next time? That night on the way home, Susan called. Her voice was steady, but every word landed like lead. Kyle, my mom says if you don't get a promotion or a raise by the end of the year, we should postpone the wedding. I asked if she felt the same way. Silence for a few long seconds. Then, I want to buy a house too. I hung up, sat on a bench by the Brooklyn Bridge watching the headlights stream past. New York's skyline blazed with light, but sitting there in the middle of it, I felt completely invisible. Next morning, I went to work. Martin caught me in the hallway, slapped my shoulder. Saw the announcement yesterday? Good teamwork. You've earned yourself a little credit. He smiled like he was doing me a favor. I nodded, said, "Thanks, Director," and walked back to my desk. That day, I started something new. I was the last one out every night. I went through the filing cabinets behind my desk, methodically. Martin's shared folder wasn't heavily secured. Maybe he figured no one would dare touch it. His password was just the department founding year plus his birthday. I cracked it in a few attempts. I started downloading everything I could: contract drafts, email threads, raw performance score sheets, rebate agreement attachments. I stashed them all in an encrypted folder. A little more each night, like an ant moving crumbs. Sometimes I'd be at it until 2 a.m., the whole floor silent except for my keyboard clicks and the low hum of the AC. A security guard did a round once and asked why I was still there. I said I was catching up on a proposal. He nodded and moved on. I didn't tell anyone, not even Tom. By June, Susan gave me her ultimatum. Sitting across the dinner table, laptop open to a real estate site showing an Upper East Side one-bedroom listed at $890,000. Kyle, I can't wait anymore. I'm turning 30. Everyone I know is married or buying property, and I'm still renting a no-doorman walk-up with you. She closed the laptop. What are you actually going to do? I said I was trying. You've been trying for 3 years, she said, voice cracking. 3 years ago, you were the connections guy. Now you're still the connections guy. You think I don't know your director calls you mascot in front of clients? My coworkers hear it. So she knew. She'd always known. I looked at her and felt like the table between us had stretched into an ocean. Susan, I said, keeping my voice flat as I could, what if this is it? What if I'm just a regular copywriter for the rest of my life? Would you still marry me? She didn't answer, but she didn't say no either. That night, I slept on the couch. The wool throw she'd given me last Valentine's, dark green, pilling at the edges, was draped over the armrest. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. The next morning, Martin called me into his office. He was leaning back in his big leather chair with my mid-year review draft in front of him. Written in marker across it was a single letter, C. Kyle, this company doesn't carry dead weight. He looked up with that phony, I'm doing you a favor smile. If it weren't for old man Hamilton, you'd have been gone a long time ago. You're replaceable to me. You get that, right? Your father up there watching you fail, but he can't keep his coffin lid shut. He laughed. He thought I'd just say, I understand, and shuffle out like always. I stood there in front of his desk, looking at his manicured Japanese bonsai, the stack of forged contract copies at the corner, his smug face reflected on the monitor. Something inside me snapped, a clean, definite crack. But my face stayed calm. I understand, Martin, I said. Thanks for all your care these 3 years. He waved me out and went back to his paperwork. When I left his office, the June sun was blazing through the window at the end of the hall. I squinted, walked back to my desk, swept my personal belongings into my bag, and opened my encrypted folder. What I had inside was enough. Enough to rip Martin Scott out of that leather chair and shatter him on the floor. But I needed the right moment. One where everyone was watching. One where he would tie his own noose in front of the whole world. I waited 3 months. The Christmas party was in December. December in New York froze you down to the marrow. Every morning, I looked in the mirror and saw the bags under my eyes getting deeper, my cheekbones hollowing out. Yesterday's stubble already pushing through by morning. I bought the most expensive concealer I could find and dabbed it under my eyes, rubbed it in with my fingers, then buttoned up my suit and walked out the door. A man keeps his front up, even when his insides are rotting. Those 3 months, Martin got worse. Having pinned that C on me, he figured I was done for, so he dumped every piece of grunt work, every scapegoat job, every task nobody else wanted squarely onto my desk. And he picked up a new hobby, calling me mascot, right in front of clients. September, a meeting with a Canadian sports drink brand. I'd prepared 30 pages of competitive analysis, thorough enough that their marketing director kept nodding along. Halfway through, Martin cut me off, grinning at the client. You know, Kyle here was personally placed by the boss. Our department treats him like a treasure, mascot-level treatment. The client director blinked, not sure how to respond. Martin kept going. Kidding, kidding. He's thorough, just short on direction. Then he flipped through my carefully prepared analysis, glanced at the last page, and said, "This data's a little stale. Refresh it," then moved on. He hadn't read a word of it. but he'd said it was stale, so it was. After the client left, the director shook my hand with something like pity in his eyes. I smiled and shook back, nails digging into my palm. October. Susan's mother took the gloves off. Dinner at her place. Elaine set down her chopsticks before the food got cold. Kyle, your uncle and I talked it over. If you two can't come up with a down payment by the end of the year, the wedding's off. Susan can't wait forever, and I'm not letting my daughter settle for. She stopped, swallowing the word deadbeat, but her face said it. Susan stared at her plate and chewed a peanut for half a minute. I said I understood. I'd find a way. Elaine jumped in immediately. That boss of yours is friends with your dad, isn't he? Go ask him. Have him put you in a better department or bump you up. What's the point of connections if you don't use them? I looked at her face, that righteous, shameless greed, and felt my stomach turn. She'd always seen my job as leeching off connections, and she was encouraging me to leech harder. She'd never once imagined what it felt like to be treated like livestock, called mascot, have 3 years of work erased. I couldn't finish my rice. Susan walked me out and tugged my sleeve in the hallway, whispering, "Don't fight with her. She's just looking out for me." I didn't turn around. I just said, "I know," and went downstairs. November. The company started planning the Christmas party. Martin was leading it himself, determined to make it big. Invite the major clients. Toast them into signing next year's deals. He personally tapped me for logistics, restaurant booking, seating, menu coordination, beverage service. "You're detail-oriented," he said. "This kind of grunt work suits you." I took the assignment with a smile. He thought he'd finally broken me into an obedient errand boy. He had no idea what I was actually counting. I ran through 3 midtown steakhouses before settling on one with a private room for 40 and an AV hookup. Martin balked at the quote. I told him it was where Vitality Source's Joanna Black liked the ribeye. He changed his tune immediately, then congratulated me. "You're finally learning to think about the client." I watched him sign the budget approval with a flourish and said nothing. 2 weeks before the party, Susan called to say her mother wanted another talk. I asked about what. "The wedding," she said. I said, "Fine, I'll come Saturday." Saturday. Elaine had laid out a fruit platter in a milder demeanor than last time. But 10 minutes in, I understood. This was a knife wrapped in silk. Kyle, I may have been harsh before, but what mother doesn't want the best for her daughter? She peeled an orange for me. I've thought it over. You don't have to cover the whole down payment yourselves. We'll put in 150 grand from our side. You put in 100, and you can mortgage the rest. That takes some pressure off. Elaine, I don't have 100 grand to put in, I said honestly. Whatever my father had left after his medical bills was long gone. Her smile flickered, then rekindled. What about that boss of yours? Isn't he connected to your dad? Borrow 100 from him, pay it back later. He can't say no if you ask. He wouldn't have the face. I watched the orange segment split in her fingers, juice running down her knuckles. I'm not borrowing money from him, I said. I'll handle my own career. Elaine set the orange down. A flat, emphatic smack. Her husband coughed in the kitchen. Susan was on the balcony, her voice lost in the wind. Kyle, I'll be blunt. Your father left you nothing decent. You've made nothing of yourself in 3 years. Susan is too soft to push you, but I'm her mother. I can't watch her rot in a tiny apartment with you. I stood up and grabbed my coat. Susan came back inside just then, stopped short. Kyle, where are you going? Work thing came up, I said. Elaine, Frank, I have to go. Susan chased me into the stairwell, grabbed my arm. What happened? What did she say? She said you deserve better, I said, looking at her. Susan, do you think you deserve better? She didn't answer. Her hand let go. That night, I went home and dug through the storage box in the study. Old photos, a few handwritten letters, and a business card from John Hamilton Sr. with a phone number written in ballpoint on the back. My father had slipped it into my pocket before he died and said, "Call him when you need to. He'll recognize your father's handwriting." I took a photo of the card with my phone and put everything away. The week before the party, Joanna Black's assistant confirmed attendance and sent over a draft of Vitality Source's direction for next year. Martin forwarded it to me with a note. "Kyle, turn this into a slide deck. Highlight our department's strengths. Need it by Friday COB. And you've done the seating chart, right? Black on my right, Sales Director Zhang on my left." I replied, "Sure." Then I read through that draft 3 times, memorizing every key data point and internal financial structure. And I adjusted the seating chart. I put myself at the far end of the table, back to the door, the most invisible spot in the room. Everything was ready. December 20th, the night of the party. I handled the final confirmations from morning on. Liquor delayed half an hour. Sorted. Menu verified. Vegetarian options confirmed. I personally tested the AV setup in the restaurant. Laptop connected, projector running smooth. At 5 p.m., I went home and changed. Dark gray wool suit, the most precise Windsor knot I'd ever tied. Stood in front of the mirror for 2 minutes, looking at my face. The eyes were the same, but something in them had shifted. The flinch, the pleading, the desperate need to please, all gone. Replaced by something I didn't have a name for. Susan was at her mother's for the night. She'd said, "Don't drink too much," before she left. I said okay. She hesitated like she wanted to add something, then just walked out. 6:30 p.m., the private room was packed. Crystal chandeliers, white linen, silver cutlery, a 5-tier champagne tower. Everyone from Creative Division 3, from sales, 2 from accounting, and 3 major client reps. Joanna Black wore a peacock green velvet dress and was laughing with Martin at the head table. Martin was glowing, his hair shellacked, the tip of his nose already flushed with alcohol. I sat at the furthest end with a glass of sparkling water untouched in front of me. Beside me was the intern, Jenna Reeves, wearing what looked like a brand new dress. The tag probably still on, since a loose thread stuck up at the back of her collar. She kept her head down, scrolling on her phone, occasionally glancing toward the commotion at the main table. Dinner came first. Ribeye and asparagus, cooked perfectly. Martin stood for 3 rounds of toasts. First to the clients, then to the team, then to himself. Everyone clinked and laughed. I clinked and laughed and looked down at my plate at the right moments. A well-trained prop. By dessert, Martin was half drunk. He left the head table with his glass, working his way around, clinking with subordinates, murmuring, "Good work this year. Keep it up." When he reached me, he stopped. The whiskey in his glass was tilting dangerously, amber liquid sloshing to the rim. "Kyle." His voice spiked, drawing the whole room's attention. "Our mascot did great tonight. Seating, menu, drinks, all on him. Everyone, give it up for the mascot." Scattered applause, the kind where people clap because the boss started it. Jenna gave a couple of half-hearted claps, then stopped, her face going pink. Martin didn't move on. He pulled an empty chair over, draped his arm across my back, and shouted toward the head table, "Joanna, have I told you about our Kyle here? The boss's godson. I treat him like a little brother." Joanna Black gave a practiced smile and swirled her wine. She wasn't about to make a scene. Martin went on. He reached over and picked up my untouched sparkling water, took a gulp, wiped his mouth, announced to the room, "You know what Kyle's best quality is? He listens. I tell him to do something, he does it. Never talks back. Sometimes I feel sorry for him. Too soft for creative work." A few old-timers chuckled. Someone said, "Like a lamb." Someone else, "Mascots are lambs, aren't they?" The table loosened into tipsy laughter. I sat there, smile locked on my face. My right hand slipped into the inner pocket of my jacket. My fingers touched the cold metal shell of the USB drive. Martin was just warming up. He started reminiscing. Remember the team retreat last year? I had him grill all night long. Next morning, his arms were covered in blisters. I sent him out for ice-cold beers. He went. When he got back, he pressed the cold bottles against his own blisters and hissed through his teeth. You were all laughing. Some laughed. Some looked down. Elisa was staring at her dessert plate, stabbing holes in her chocolate cake. And that vitality source pitch. Martin spun toward Joanna Black. Joanna, remember the lively living concept? Blew your marketing team away. Who made that one? Our Kyle made it. I let him cook it up. Then I tweaked a few words and submitted it. Huh. He said it. He just said it. On his own, in front of Joanna Black, the entire department, 3 client reps. He'd admitted to stealing credit, and he'd laughed about it like a punchline. Joanna Black's smile held for half a second, then smoothed back into professional neutral. She'd probably known something was off, but nobody had ever said it to her face. Martin was oblivious. He kept chuckling, his hand heavy on my shoulder. So see? Mascot listens. That's what I love about him. Kyle, come on, you're up. Say something for us tonight. He shoved his glass into my hand. The whole room's attention pressed down on me. Drunk, lazy, expecting the usual. Thanks, everyone. I'll keep doing my best. I stood up. The whiskey in my hand smelled sweet and sharp. I looked at Martin's flushed face. He was smiling, waiting for me to fold back into my chair. My eyes swept across the table. Every face was different. Martin oblivious, Joanna Black curious, Tom's knuckles white on his napkin, Elisa finally looking at me with something I'd been waiting to see. Like she was waiting for me to say something real. Something that mattered. Jenna, beside me, whispered, Kyle, don't listen to him. I listened to no one. I set the glass down. Soft. No sound against the tablecloth. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out the USB drive. Flat black metal, thumb-sized, with a white sticker on it. 2 words in my handwriting. A gift. Martin, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but the room hushed as if everyone sensed the shift. 3 years. Thank you. I put together my annual review, a little present. Happy holidays. I slid the drive into his jacket pocket, right where his embroidered initials sat, MS in gold thread. Martin blinked. His drunken bravado faltered, his smile frozen between pleasure and confusion. He looked down at the drive in his pocket, then up at me, mouth opening. I didn't give him time to speak. I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair, shrugged it on, pulled out my phone, and, in front of everyone, opened the company work groups. Creative Division 3. Company-wide directory. Executive group. For group chats total. One by one, I hit leave group and delete chat history. Last one was the project chat, Vitality Source Task Force. Martin had set it up last year. I left that too. My screen went to the home page. The private room was dead silent. I could hear bubbles popping into champagne flutes. Happy holidays, everyone. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, a chair scraped back. Martin's, clattering against the floor. Then his voice, trying to hold things together through the booze. Hey, kid's having a little tantrum. Don't mind him, Joanna. Let's see what our mascot's cooked up for me. The door clicked shut behind me. I stood in the hallway, my back against the dark red wall under a gilded oil painting of cows in a western landscape. The warm ceiling lights beamed down on my head. I looked at the hand still holding my phone. The knuckles were white. 1 second. 2. 3. From inside the room, a woman's scream, sharp as fingernails on a blackboard. Chairs shoving back, metal legs scraping marble. A man shouting, "Turn it off. Kill the projector." Who the hell is connected? Then Martin's voice. A sound I'd never heard from him before, strangled, ripped from his throat like something was crushing his windpipe. What the fuck is this? Where did these come from? Turn it off. More chairs scraping. Gasps. Someone yelled, "Oh my God." Someone else. Martin, stay calm. The server at the end of the hall with a decanter froze, stepped back, sloshed wine across the red carpet, a dark stain spreading. I pocketed my phone, zipped my coat, and pushed through the restaurant's revolving door. The December wind hit my face, carrying exhaust fumes and hot dog carts, gritty and real. I walked 2 blocks toward the apartment before my phone started vibrating. First call, Susan. I didn't answer. Second, Tom. I picked up. Kyle. Tom's voice was trembling, like a man hauled out of freezing water. You're insane. You're insane. You're insane. What did you put in that drive? Martin smashing the projector. Joanna Black just said she's calling the cops. Helen Parker's here too. She just called legal. Tom. I said, not slowing down. 3 years. Everything you saw. Everything I told you. If HR comes to you, will you tell the truth? 3 or 4 seconds of silence, wind roaring through the receiver. Yeah, he said, and his voice steadied. Fuck yeah. I should have said it years ago. Martin made me revise Joanna Black's contract last year. I kept a backup copy. Good. HR will call tomorrow. Tell them everything. Second call, Elisa. Her voice was flat, almost cold. Kyle, is that PDF of Martin's altered rebate agreement in your drive? Yeah. Then I'm a witness. He had me modify the PDF last year. I kept the original file. He can't fucking squirm out of this one. I stopped at the Brooklyn Bridge intersection, waiting for the light. A yellow cab rolled past, its taillights bleeding 2 red streaks into the night. Thanks, Elisa. For what? I should have spoken up ages ago. Gotta go, HR's calling me. Third call, a number I didn't recognize. I answered. An older man's voice, measured, deliberate. Mr. Miller? Charles Wood, attorney. John Hamilton Sr. gave me your number. He said there might be some events tonight. Asked me to get in touch with you tomorrow. Your father signed a memorandum with him before he passed, regarding certain employment protections at the company. We should meet. Mr. Wood, I said. What time tomorrow? 9. My office on 5th Avenue. Bring everything you have. I'll be there. I hung up. My phone buzzed 3 more times. Susan's name flashing. Her photo on my lock screen. Last year at Central Park, white dress, laughing in the sunlight. I turned the phone face down in my coat pocket. The light turned green. I crossed with the crowd. The phone kept buzzing. Then it stopped. The screen went dark. I didn't look back. I didn't go home that night. It wasn't home anymore. I walked 6 blocks to a budget hotel. The front desk clerk was a young South Asian guy who asked how long I was staying. 3 nights, I said. My credit card had about $4,000 left on it. Enough. The room was small. A bed, a desk, a bathroom, a window facing a fire escape, a cracked mirror on the wall. I showered and sat on the bed scrolling through my phone. I'd left all the work chats, but Tom and Elisa kept sending direct messages. Tom sent a string of voice notes. First one, recorded from a stairwell, heavy breathing. Martin got walked out by security. They took his car keys. Helen Parker suspended him on the spot, sealed all his electronics. Kyle, you should see the fallout in accounting. They saw that rebate agreement and lost their minds. They had no idea. Absolutely none. Second note, 20 minutes later, Joanna Black called her CEO from the hallway. I heard her say, major financial irregularities inside the company. We need to renegotiate next year's contract. She really emphasized renegotiate. Third, one more thing. Martin called Susan before they took him away. No idea what he said, but his face went even whiter after. I put the phone down on the pillow. Martin calling Susan. What could he have said? Threats? Begging? Told her I was destroying him and asked her to talk me down? Whatever it was, Susan's reaction was probably written in the 17 missed calls on my screen. I turned off the light and lay there, watching the smoke detector's red blink on the ceiling. My mind ran through the last 3 years like a movie on loop, every frame vivid. The first time I was called mascot, the first time my work got stolen, the first time I saw my proposal credited to someone else, the first time I stood in front of that whiteboard full of red ink. Those memories used to make my stomach clench. Tonight they just felt cold, like standing on a frozen lake looking down at the weeds and stones underneath. Visible, but untouchable. I slept maybe 4 hours. The neighbor's door slamming woke me at 6. I brushed my teeth, looked in the cracked mirror. Dark circles still there, but my energy was different. I put on my suit, drank the instant coffee from the hotel room, and left for Charles Wood's office at 8:45. Wood's office was in an old Fifth Avenue building with an elevator that still had a manual gate. A brass nameplate on the door. Charles Wood, attorney at law. He was waiting inside, a silver-haired man in a navy wool vest, a pen clipped in his shirt pocket, clean fingernails. He shook my hand with a firm grip. Mr. Miller, sit. His handshake was solid. John Sr. called early this morning. Heard about last night. He asked me to tell you something. Your father took a bullet for me once. I'll pay it back for his son. I sat in the leather chair, took the water he offered, and said, Mr. Wood, I've got materials. I need to know how to use them legally. Wood leaned back. Show me. I connected my phone to his laptop and opened the encrypted folder. 3 years of evidence, sorted by date, subfoldered by incident. Email screenshots, chat logs, document revision history, performance score sheets, contract drafts from the shared drive, financial attachments, and one audio file. Wood raised an eyebrow at the recording. What's this? Last year's retreat. Martin got drunk and said, I skim a little off Vitality Source every year. They don't even know. I recorded it on my phone. The audio's rough, but it's clear enough. Wood listened to the whole clip, scrolled back, listened again, then took off his glasses and polished them. Mr. Miller, do you understand the legal weight of this? In some jurisdictions, that clip alone qualifies as evidence of intent. So it's admissible. It's admissible, but we need procedural discipline. He put his glasses back on. You pulled these files from the company's shared drive. Even if the permissions were open, some of these financial records might be protected under internal policies. They could technically come after you for data policy violations. So what do I do? Nothing. Wood smiled. You claim they were personal work records you kept innocently. The evidence points to Martin's fraud. That's the bigger public interest. The company won't touch you right now. Besides, John Sr. already called his son. The board's position is clear. They're backing you. He sorted the files into a manila envelope, picked up his phone, and dialed. Helen Parker? Charles Wood here, representing Kyle Miller. We're sending a formal complaint to your legal and HR departments this afternoon. Workplace harassment, embezzlement, document fraud, with an initial evidence catalog. Thank you. He hung up and turned to me. Once the formal complaint is filed, the company's investigation is mandatory. External audit will take about 2 weeks. Martin's suspended at home. His bank accounts are already frozen. What's your next move? Wait. For what? For him to make a mistake, I said. He won't sit still while the investigation runs. He'll try to get help, delete evidence, spin it back on me. When he moves, he leaves footprints. Wood nodded. Smart. Your personal situation, your fiancée? Martin called her last night. I hear. You want to handle that separately. She's not my fiancée anymore. But I'll talk to her directly when I need to. One rule, Wood said as he saw me out. Any communication with Martin Scott goes through me. If he calls, emails, texts, don't reply. Forward everything to me. No exceptions. I agreed and left. Back on Fifth Avenue, the winter sun slanted across the pavement, stretching shadows thin. I pulled out my phone. 17 missed calls from Susan. 6 texts. The latest, sent at 7 a.m. Kyle, where are you? We need to talk in person. Martin called last night. He said you're trying to destroy him. Said something about your father's trust fund being fake. What's going on? Please, let's just talk. I didn't reply. 15 minutes later. I came home this morning. Half your stuff is gone. You're really leaving like this? After 4 years, you don't even leave a message. I read both texts twice, then typed. You said I had until the end of the year to get promoted or we'd postpone the wedding. I got promoted. Now we're not getting married. The ring's in the blue box on the coffee table. Take it. I muted her number. That afternoon, HR sent an official notice. Helen Parker herself. Mr. Miller, we have received your formal complaint. An internal investigation is now underway. Please remain available for contact. Also, John Hamilton Jr. has requested a meeting with you tomorrow at 2 p.m. in the executive office. Please confirm. I replied, confirmed. That evening, Tom called. He'd been loaned to the sales department for 2 weeks, but Creative Division 3 was buzzing with tension. Martin's suspension had spread through the company overnight, and every single person in the department had been called in for an interview. They asked me about how Martin talked to people, verbal abuse, forced overtime without pay, off-scope assignments. I told them everything. Elisa gave them 3 times as much. She told them about Martin making her fake design sign-off records. HR's reaction? Helen Parker took notes for 4 pages. Her face was green the whole time. Kyle, you realize what you did? A guy who'd been bulldozing people for 12 years, and everyone had a mountain of complaints but didn't dare open their mouths. Your USB lit the fuse. The whole pile went up at once. Next day, 2 p.m., I was in John Hamilton Jr.'s office. He wasn't behind his desk this time. He was on the phone by the window, gestured for me to wait, finished his call in 2 minutes, then sat. Kyle, sit. He had a thick folder on his desk labeled Martin Scott, Preliminary Investigation Report. Did you get any sleep last night? Enough. He studied me for a moment, somewhere between careful and impressed. My father called again this morning. He's been running on 3 hours of sleep since last night, repeating one thing. Kyle's dad carried me through the hardest years. We can't let his son down. Mr. Hamilton, I appreciate your father's kindness. But this isn't about favors. Martin's actions are documented. Anyone in his position would face the same consequences. John Jr. nodded. Well said. Here's where we're at. Internal investigation confirms Martin's unauthorized rebate modifications with Vitality Source. Total discrepancy, $743,000, spanning from last March to this October. In terms of departmental conduct, we have witness statements from more than 12 employees, unanimous testimony regarding verbal abuse, humiliation, forced overtime, and credit theft. The most serious allegations are enough to justify termination and civil action. Criminal charges? That depends on your attorney and the DA's office. Wood has been in touch. He'll forward evidence to the Manhattan DA. Martin's looking at commercial fraud, which exceeds $500,000. That's a felony in New York. He paused. But I didn't ask you here just to talk about Martin. I want to know, will you stay? What do you mean? Martin's gone. Creative Division 3 needs a new director. You've been in this department for 3 years. You know the workflows. You have client relationships. And more than anyone, you know what went wrong and how to prevent it from happening again. If you're interested, I'm offering you interim director. 3-month probationary period. Upon conversion, full director's compensation. I thought about it. I'm not asking for special treatment because of what happened. If I take the interim position, I want to be evaluated on the same standards as anyone else. If I don't pass probation, I'm out. No name dropping, no favors. And I have one condition. Name it. An open departmental review. Let everyone in Creative Division 3 know exactly what Martin did, step by step, including my own experience. Not to humiliate anyone, but to make sure no one ever tries this again. The mascot label? Gone. John Jr. extended his hand. Deal. We shook. His hand was dry and warm, different from Wood's, more human. Leaving the executive floor, I walked past Creative Division 3. People saw me, and their posture changed. 3 people stood up to say hello. One of them was David Chun, the guy who'd laughed the loudest at the team retreat last year. He was beaming now, that desperate, sucking up smile. I didn't slow down. His smile froze midair. I didn't have time for groveling. Those who'd been quiet while Martin ran wild had started shifting their allegiances the moment he was suspended. 2 days ago, David had been muttering in the break room. Kyle's playing dirty. Today he was acting like we were old buddies. My phone rang in the lobby. Wood. Kyle, Martin's lawyer contacted me this morning. Martin wants to meet you, talk settlement. His attorney said he's willing to offer financial compensation in exchange for withdrawing some allegations. What's the number? They haven't named one. But I'd advise against meeting. If he offers something and you accept or refuse on the spot, that's evidence either way. I understand. Tell him no. All communications through legal. No direct meetings. Already said that. Second thing, Wood's tone dropped half a degree. Someone called Vitality Source's finance department this afternoon, claiming to be an external mediator you'd hired, asking them to delay cooperation with the internal investigation. Their compliance head recorded the call. The number traced back to Martin's personal phone. He's still thrashing. I stood at the automatic doors, watching them open and close against the December cold. Let him thrash, I said. Every move he makes adds to his case. Mr. Wood, document this too. Already filed. Kyle, you're remarkably calm. 3 years under someone's heel. You either stay down or you stand up and never bend again. I chose the second. I walked out of the building. The evening was darkening, streetlights flickering on, warm yellow spilling across the sidewalk. I went to the coffee shop I used to stop at after overtime, ordered a black Americano, half sugar. The girl at the register looked up. You've been working less lately. Haven't seen you at night for a while. I smiled. Probably won't be coming in late as much. She handed me the cup with a cardboard sleeve that said, "Every day is a new day." I walked down the street drinking it, phone quiet. Susan had stopped texting. Martin was somewhere frantically calling anyone he thought could help. Friends, contacts, anyone still willing to take his calls. He didn't realize that his entire network had started severing ties the moment the news broke. I took another sip of coffee, hot enough to burn my tongue. It tasted like freedom. Tomorrow would bring the investigation's verdict, Martin's charges, the company's statement, and my department-wide review. And Susan, whatever she chose, I already knew. But tonight I'd finish this coffee and sleep in a hotel room. The first real peace I'd felt in 3 years. Christmas week. I stayed in the hotel, didn't go anywhere. Wood's office sent me daily briefs, investigation progress, Martin's increasingly desperate attempts at damage control. December 23rd. Martin reached out to an independent board member through an intermediary, claiming I'd fabricated everything. The board member recorded the conversation and turned it over to the investigative team. Martin's timeline was all over the place. Dates didn't match, amounts didn't match, and the digital signature on the forged contract he claimed was planted had been generated from his own registered account 6 months earlier. December 24th, Christmas Eve. I ate fried noodles alone at a Chinese place next to the hotel. At the next table, a family of three, the little girl banging chopsticks on the table waiting for her food, her mom laughing. "Be patient, it's coming." I looked at them and thought about my father, then finished my noodles, paid, and went back to the hotel. December 25th. Wood's voice note came early, unusually serious. "Kyle, Martin sent an email to his ex-wife this morning. Copied his lawyer and his sister. He's claiming that half of what you have was stolen from his computer and that he'll countersue for misappropriation of trade secrets. He used pretty aggressive language, said you've been plotting this for years, that you're not a good person. He's trying to play the victim." Ex-wife? He's divorced. Separated. Divorce papers are still in progress. But his wife, ex-wife, contacted me this morning. She wants to cooperate. Provided 3 bank account numbers Martin's been hiding under shell companies in Delaware without the company's knowledge. I listened to the voice note and sat on the edge of the bed for a while. Martin's counterattack was coming faster than I'd expected, and it was just as clumsy as I predicted. 12 years of power had made him believe he could lean on anyone. With that power gone, all he had were the same tired weapons: threats, deflection, framing. Back then I might have panicked, but every piece of evidence I had came with timestamps and revision logs. His countersuit had no foundation. I wrote back to Wood, "Let him countersue. Misappropriation requires unauthorized access." His shared folder password was literally the department founding year plus his birthday. I bypassed nothing. Also, his own email claiming premeditation undermines his credibility. The prosecution can use it as a negative inference. Wood sent back a thumbs-up emoji. December 26th, the external audit concluded. Martin Scott had siphoned $743,000 through contract alterations and shell company transfers. The report also flagged inflated project budgets, another $110,000 in misappropriated departmental funds. Total, over $850,000. The report went to the board the same day, with a copy to the Manhattan DA's office. December 27th, the DA issued a subpoena. That afternoon, Susan showed up at the hotel lobby. My room phone rang. I hesitated, then said, "Send her up." 3 minutes later, she was at the door, pea coat, hair pulled back, no makeup, dark circles. She carried a plastic bag with my charging cable and a hoodie I'd left behind. "Can I come in?" Her voice was dry. I stepped aside. She walked in and looked around the room. Cracked mirror, file folders on the nightstand, then back to me. "So you're really leaving me?" She started it. "You're the one who set conditions," I said, leaning against the windowsill. "You said if I didn't get promoted by year-end, we'd postpone. I got promoted. Now we're not getting married. That was just talk. You talked that way for a whole month. Your mother said Susan deserves better right in front of you, and you didn't say a word. 3 years, I was called mascot at work, had everything taken from me, got ground into the dirt. You knew all of it, and you never once asked me, 'Are you okay?'" Her lips trembled. Her eyes started to redden. "Kyle, I was wrong. I wanted stability so badly. All my friends are married, buying homes. I panicked. My mother pushes. I feel the pressure. You aimed your pressure straight at me. Your mother aimed hers at me. I've been full of bullet holes for 3 years. Did any of you see them?" She was silent. The plastic bag slipped from her hand to the floor. She crouched to pick it up, and her shoulders shook. I saw the thin gold chain at the back of her neck, the little angel pendant I'd given her for her birthday last year. She was still wearing it. But none of that mattered. "Susan, you found the ring in the blue box, right?" She nodded. "Sell it or return it. Up to you. Our accounts are clear. I paid more than my share of the rent for 3 years. You paid less. Utilities were split. The extra 3,200 from the last 6 months. Keep it. She stood up, took a long breath. Kyle, do you really not want me anymore? I looked at her eyes. Over 4 years I'd seen them full of affection, dependence, irritation, disappointment. Today there was something new in them. Fear. Fear that I was really gone. Fear of losing someone she'd taken for granted. But whether that fear held any love, I couldn't tell anymore. Go, I said. Don't come looking for me again. Forget about the wedding. I hope you do well. She stood at the doorway for 10 long seconds. Then she turned and walked out. Her footsteps faded down the hall, the elevator chimed, and the floor went silent again. I sat on the bed and looked at the cable sticking out of the plastic bag. I pushed it back inside. December 31st. John Jr.'s assistant called to say the internal investigation had concluded. Martin Scott's termination notice would go out in the company-wide email that afternoon. The wording was harsher than I'd expected. Martin Scott has committed serious professional misconduct during his tenure, in violation of the company's code of conduct and ethical standards. The board has resolved to terminate his employment effective immediately and reserves the right to pursue civil action. Criminal charges have been referred to judicial authorities. 30 minutes after the email, the company forum exploded. People who'd been silenced for years finally came out. Former employees from Creative Division 3 posted long threads about their own experiences with Martin. One went viral on Twitter. Vitality Source released an official statement. We will fully cooperate with the investigation and conduct an independent audit of all historical contracts with this agency. Joanna Black resigned as VP of Marketing the same evening, citing personal management oversight. But everyone knew she'd taken the fall to distance herself from the rebate scandal. Martin's attorney sent a letter to Wood on New Year's Day. My client is willing to cooperate with the prosecution under a plea agreement, seeking a reduced sentence. He'd finally accepted that every avenue of escape was sealed. The evidence was too complete, the chain too tight, to argue his way out. January 4th, first day back after the holiday. Creative Division 3 held the department-wide review I'd requested. The conference room held 30 people. I stood at the front in a navy sweater and white button-up, no tie. Next to me sat John Hamilton Jr. and Helen Parker. Behind them, observers from other departments. I opened my slides. Page 1, the 3-year timeline. For 40 minutes, I laid it out, everything from the whiteboard on day 1 to the Christmas party. I walked through Martin's mascot comments, his stolen proposals, the forged performance reviews, the 3 a.m. coffee runs, the scapegoating, the project presentations where I'd sat in the back while he took credit for my work. Every single thing was supported by screenshots and original emails, dates and names all crystal clear. The room was so quiet you could hear the HVAC hum. I noticed people looking down. Jenna, in the back row, clutching her pen, eyes wide. David Chun, 3rd row, pale as paper, his fingers twisting under the table. When I reached the financial fraud portion, John Jr. added the audit figures quietly. 743,000 plus 110,000. Over 850,000 total. The room fell utterly silent. Martin had done this under their noses for 3 years. Nobody had caught it. Or if they had, nobody had said anything. I'm telling you all this, I concluded, not because I want your pity, not because I'm going through the room holding grudges. I'm telling you this because I want to make sure this department never produces another mascot. Intern or veteran. Whatever you contribute, you get credit for it. You get paid for it. This is a creative department, not a feudal court. I closed my laptop. The room was frozen. Then Tom started clapping. Elisa followed. Jenna joined. Then more and more, until everyone was standing. John Jr. patted my shoulder as he rose. Helen Parker was blinking back tears. Standing in that applause, I suddenly felt like the kid who'd stood in front of that whiteboard 3 years ago. He'd finally stepped off it. As people filed out, Jenna paused beside me and murmured, "Kyle, I want to learn from you." "Really learn?" I nodded. David Chun edged over from the side, his face arranged into an apology, his mouth opening. Before he could speak, Elisa grabbed my arm from behind. "Tom's got a table. Let's go eat." I walked out with Elisa. David's smile died again on his face. That night, the three of us drank until 2 a.m. Tom got so drunk he was yelling, "Long live the mascot," until Elisa beamed him with a crumpled napkin. I leaned back in the booth, watching them, listening to the country music drifting from the bar speakers. A cab rolled past outside, its lights reflecting off the window glass. And in that reflection, I saw my own face. It looked younger than it had 3 months ago. Martin Scott's trial began at the end of January. Closed hearing at Manhattan Criminal Court. No press, but what kept me updated in real time. The prosecution's exhibit list was 47 pages long. A third came from my encrypted folder, a third from the company's internal audit, and the remaining third from Karen Scott's bank account records. Martin had gone through 3 lawyers. His final one was a quiet, middle-aged woman specializing in plea bargains. She negotiated the deal. January 28th, Martin pled guilty to all 7 charges: 2 counts of grand larceny, 2 counts of commercial fraud, 2 counts of document forgery, and 1 count of obstruction of justice. The obstruction charge stemming from his attempt to interfere with Vitality Sources' finance department. The judge read the sentence: 9 years imprisonment, $320,000 in fines, 5 years of supervised release after prison, and restitution of the full $850,000 to the company. Wood called me after the verdict. His voice was as flat as if he were reading the weather. 9 years. $320 fine. Restitution $850. His legal bills will eat whatever's left of his savings. Karen filed for a full property division today. She's claiming their entire Long Island house as child support collateral. He has kids, 2 daughters, 11 and 9. Custody to Karen. Wood paused. Kyle, don't feel sorry for him. His actions destroyed more than his own life. Some of the people he crushed had depression for 2 years after quitting. One of them's still paying off credit card debt. His girls at least have a mother who's looking out for them. I hung up and sat in my office chair. The January sky outside the window was a flat lead gray. I thought about everyone Martin had hurt over the years. Tom, Elisa, all the people who'd left before I ever arrived. Martin had ruined more than just my 3 years. He'd just finally run into someone who fought back. February, the interim label came off. I was officially director of Creative Division 3. On the same day the promotion was announced, the company rolled out a new policy, the Credit Compliance Regulation. Every client-facing proposal had to list primary contributors by name, and any revision over 30% required documented change history. The regulation ended with a note. This policy is established to prevent misappropriation of others' work. Violators will face disciplinary action, including termination. Tom got promoted to senior planning lead. Elisa became head of the design team with a 25% raise. When she got her new contract, she grabbed my arm in the break room and said, "Kyle, you know I almost quit 2 years ago?" I said, "You don't have to now." Jenna, the intern, converted to full-time and joined my group. Her first morning, she stood outside my office door hugging her laptop like a life preserver. I waved her in. She said, "Kyle, can I really learn proposals from you?" I said yes, with one rule. If I teach you, and you build it, your name goes on it, not mine. She smiled, eyes a little wet. Late February, Susan's mother reached out through a mutual friend, asking for dinner. Your aunt wants to talk. She says she was too harsh before. I had the friend pass back my reply. No need. Susan and I are done. The friend later told me Elaine had thrown a fit at home, fuming that nobody knew that kid had this in him. Susan just stayed quiet the whole time. I read the message and smiled. Mid-March, a package arrived at the office. Inside, a card and a set of keys. The handwriting was Susan's. Kyle, I sold the ring and donated the money to a workplace anti-bullying charity. Found these keys in the apartment. They're yours. Hope you're doing well. Susan. I put the keys and the card in my office drawer. Some things belong where they are. That same evening, leaving the office, I ran into someone. Karen Scott, Martin's ex-wife. I recognized her from news photos. Short brown hair, gentle eyes, a jaw set tight. She stepped out of the revolving door and approached me. Mr. Miller, I'm Karen Scott, Martin's ex. She extended her hand. I shook it. Her palm was cold. I was here for property transfer paperwork. I wanted to say something. Go ahead. I apologize for Martin. Not that it changes anything. She looked at me, tired, but without resentment. I knew some of what he did. He always said it was for the family, so I believed him. I don't really know who he was doing it for. It wasn't for me or the kids. Karen, you don't need to apologize for him. His choices are his. She nodded. My daughter asked me yesterday when her father's coming home. I said, it'll be years. She asked if he did something bad. I said, yes, he did something bad. I don't want to lie to them. She paused. Mr. Miller, I hope you go well. You did the right thing. She walked toward the parking lot, her thin frame swallowed by an oversized jacket, sleeves hiding her hands. I watched her go, then turned back into the building. The elevator climbed floor by floor. At 27, the doors opened. Creative Division 3's workspace was alight and humming. Tom on a call, gesturing wildly. Elisa patiently walking two juniors through design software. Jenna at her desk, chewing her pen cap, staring at a half-finished proposal. I walked over and looked at her screen. Jenna, this angle is wrong. The client's targeting a young demographic, but your case studies are all 35 plus. She looked up, nervous. I'll redo it. Let me show you. I pulled a chair over, moved the keyboard toward me. Start with the product lines aimed at Gen Z. Enter from there. She leaned in, focused. The fluorescent light shone on her notebook. I paused mid-sentence and looked around the workspace. Everyone busy, keyboards clattering, phones ringing, printers whirring. Chaos, but an orderly kind. 3 years ago, I couldn't have said a single word in this office. Today, I was here, next to a new hire who actually wanted to learn, across from colleagues who'd risked their own jobs to testify. And nobody on this floor called me mascot anymore. I turned back to Jenna's screen and kept walking her through the Gen Z user profile adjustments. At the end of the day, I shut down my computer. The potholes on my desk had grown a third new leaf, tender and bright green, swaying in the AC draft. Margaret, the old assistant, had repotted it last week and said, "You're doing well with this one." I told her it was probably the light. I grabbed my jacket and headed out. Tom was by the water cooler with his mug. He saw me and called, "Elisa wants Thai tonight." "Coming." I said, "Yeah," just grabbing my phone. In the elevator, Tom leaned against the wall. "Kyle, do you ever dream about the old days?" "Sometimes. Then I wake up and stop thinking about it." I had one where Martin patted my shoulder and said, "Tom, help me fix this file." I woke up in a cold sweat. He scoffed. Anyway, I was near his street last week. Saw a realtor sign on his house. He'd only lived there 2 years, spent over 200 grand on renovations, they said. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. March evening, daylight fading slow, street lights glowing warm, the air smelling of thawing snow and asphalt. Tom, and I walked out toward the Thai place. He was rattling off his order like a grocery list. Tom yum, crab curry. I walked beside him, my shoes pressing into the last patches of slush, the moisture making faint squeaks. Passing the coffee shop, the cashier was pulling down her window for the night. She saw me and waved through the glass. I nodded back. Tom asked, "You know her?" I said, "Used to come in late all the time." We got familiar. We turned the corner. The red neon of the Thai restaurant glowed ahead. I stopped for a second, pulled out my phone, and took a picture. Captioned it, "No overtime tonight." Tom looked over. "When did you last post anything?" 3 years, I think. He looked at me and didn't ask again. We pushed through the glass door. Warm air, lemongrass, and coconut milk. Elisa was already in the window booth, waving, a beer already open on the table. I sat down, took the glass she'd poured for me, and drank. Cold, bitter, foam dissolving on my tongue. Outside, a guy walked his golden retriever past the window. The dog pulled ahead, tail wagging like a propeller. "Kyle." Elisa raised her glass. "Today 3 of not being a mascot." Tom raised his. "To year 3 of not being a mascot." I laughed, clinked my glass against theirs. The sound was brief and clean. "To the future," I said, "where there are no mascots." We drank. The beer went down cold and smooth. I closed my eyes for a moment, then opened them. Outside, the golden retriever had already run off around the corner. The owner was jogging after him, calling, "Slow down, slow down." The streetlight stretched his shadow long across the pavement. I put down my glass and started flipping through the menu for the tom yum. Days kept turning over.